Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salam ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Allahumma alimna bima yanfa'una. Allahumma alimna bima yanfa'una wanfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna bi fadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. Okay, so it says قوله نبكي. No, I believe we're here. He says قوله نبكي من ذكرى حبيب ومنزل. قال بعض أهل اللغة نبكي مجزوم على تأويل الأمر وتقدير قفا فلنبكي، واحتج بقول الله عز وجل ذرهم يأكلوا ويتمتعوا. So leave them عفوا leave them. What is the جواب الطلب? يأكلوا ويتمتعوا. Right. So it's a bit tricky. ذرهم يأكلون وذرهم يأكلوا. Leave them eating, leave them, comma, and they will eat. Right. So it says قال فمعناه ذرهم فليأكلوا. Right. Leave them and let them do that. قالوا كذلك قوله عز وجل قل للذين آمنوا يغفروا. This is a bit more complex. فمعناه فليغفروا. Right, this is a bit more complex down. قال آخرون نبكي مجزوم لأنه جواب. So that's جواب الطلب proper, as opposed to here it's kind of like something implied. لأنه جواب وجزاء or something like that, I don't know. مقدر والتقدير قفا وإن تقفا نبكي. Right, this is جواب الطلب proper. But here the issue he's discussing is the whole nature of جواب الطلب and weird scenarios where it looks like جواب الطلب, it doesn't really make sense. So here ذرهم, right, وإن تذرهم يأكلوا. It's a bit weird because it would make more sense to say ذرهم يأكلون, ذرهم آكلين, right, as a حال, right, or مفعول به ثاني. That's another position as well, that تركه, like تركه or ذرة, can have like a, it works a bit like an ism naqis or something else. This one here, this is just really strange. قل للذين آمنوا يغفروا. Right, that's a whole lot, much more complex. Anyway, the point is it's جواب الطلب. كما تقول الرجل اقصد فلانا ينفعك، معناه إن تقصده ينفعك. وقال الفراء الأمر لا جواب له في الحقيقة, doesn't actually have a جواب. وذلك أنك إذا قلت الرجل أطع الله يدخلك الجنة، التقدير أطع الله إن تطعه يدخلك الجنة. So he's saying there's something implied. لأنه لا يدخل الجنة بأمرك. Right. وإنما يدخل إذا أطاع الله تبارك وتعالى. قالوا بكى الرجل. Oh, that's something else. Now we're going to نبكي. Okay, so the point, the discussion here is what is the nature of جواب الطلب, A, and then B, how does it apply to the scenario of ذرهم يأكلوا, and more so قل للذين آمنوا يغفروا. Right, it's a bit more complex. Okay, so then he goes on to بكى يبكي. So he says يقال بكى الرجل يبكي الرجل بكاء وبكا. Right, بكا. So on the pattern فعال, like دعاء, right, and صراخ because you're making a sound, and on the pattern فعل Why would it be on the pattern fu'al? Fu'al is what? I can't think of what fu'al would be. Fu'al as a masdar. Not sure. So I know this, but buka makes sense, right? These are often for sounds. Surah, dua, buka, etc. So buka another pattern. فعل بالمد والقصر. قال شاعر, and he says here, this is Ka'ab ibn Malik. He says بكت عيني وحق لها بكاها وما يغني البكاء ولا العويل. Right? So there's two things here though. One is buka and being on the pattern fu'al. On the pattern fu'al. The other one is doing hadf, the hamza. So here he uses the hamza, here he doesn't. Maybe he just dropped it here, you know? Like ja'a, he just say ja, right? So that's something else, right? That you can just drop the hamza at the end, as opposed to it being on a different pattern. Allahu a'lam. Okay, and he says وَمِن في صلة نبكي, أي it's متعلق, right? It's متعلق to it. والذكرى خفض بمن وهي مضافة إلى الحبيب والمنزل نسق أي معطوف على الحبيب. Now one thing here it doesn't mention, because they don't usually mention these things, right? These, but notice it's not definite. نبكي من ذكرى حبيب ومنزلي. So this tankir in reality is for what? نبكي من ذكرى حبيب ومنزلي. This tankir is for ta'zeem. I think it's quite a good example of that. Right? Let's remember someone who was really, really loved, and some place that has so many things, so many memories, right? So there's a big difference. So here he just shifts into the definite, right? He just, the beloved, the place. But it is significant that it's indefinite. And generally speaking, they won't mention these things at all. So if you asked him, he would be cognizant of that and feel it and be like, yeah. But we have to understand that balagha is not developed that much by this time, right? So balagha is basically this product of many different things, but there's this confluence of kind of two things: the whole issue of theological issues, i'jaz and metaphor in the Quran and those kind of issues. That's one side of the discussion, and the other side of the discussion is literary criticism. So both of those kind of paths are separate from nahu and sarf. So so a tankir al-ta'zeem is not part of the toolkit of someone like Ibn al-Anbari or al-Farra, or it's not part of their toolkit. So they're aware of it, but that's not really something they talk about.
So, Sheikh, what do the literary critics talk about? Do they just talk about Badir or?
And I don't think so. They think about other things as well. So Ibn al-Mu'taz, his book is Badi'. That's not just Badi'. He's just calling it Badi', but it's not just that. So he's talking about majaz and other things. But it's just not very tight and clear. Just like, let's say, for example, like the concept of trauma. I'm sure everyone's always thought of the concept of trauma, right? Or like the subconscious, or the Freudian slip. But then, like, these a lot of these things have become like solidified over the last 100, 200 years, etc. Um, it's a different thing. So they just wouldn't mention stuff like that. You wouldn't see like it. So um, and even like that, there's a masala in nahu. What is it? بقرة ضحكت. How could you have the mubtada as indefinite? So they're like that's a sentence. بقرة ضحكت. Like it's a valid sentence, even though you have ibtida bin nakira. And so they don't really say things like, oh, because it's a nakira for ta'zeem, so there's a kind of implied this. They don't really say things like that. They analyze it in other ways. So it's just clear that their toolkit is not balagha. Whereas the late scholars, right, let's say over the last 500 years or more so, their balagha is mature. It's in their curriculum, in their curricula or curriculum, whatever and they're all using it on a regular basis. It's just normal, you know. Even things like hadf al-mudaf, right? So the grammarians will say things like, oh, حذف المضاف وأقيم مضاف المضاف حذف المضاف وأقيم المضاف إليه مقامه. What they really mean is it's majaz. But they analyze it in a nahwi way. Oh yeah, the mudaf ilayh was dropped because that's part of their toolkit. That's part of their things that they would use and say. Does that make sense?
Yes. So the later Balagha scholars, like if you look at something like Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani,
Mm-hmm.
are they primarily taking from the theological side then?
No, not primarily. No. So basically we have these two things that build nahu the sorry balagha, literary criticism, and these theological discussions, and then the big jump is Abdul Qahir and Jurjani, and so Abdul Qahir and Jurjani, that's where things really become crystallized, and we have the three sciences, and um, we have these three things, and it's very much it becomes organized and mature and clear. So
Yeah,
so
I guess like the trend of like over rationalizing balagha, like is that
that's just
was
that's
that
just that's not real. So it's not related. So if you look at, for example, Muhammad Abdu, he did the tahqiq of Dala'il al-Ijaz, and what's the other one by Abdul Qahir, Dala'il al-Ijaz and uh, Asrar al-Balagha, or I can't remember what it's called now. He has these two books, Abdul Qahir and Jurjani. So he did the tahqiq of it and he printed it. He said, why? He's like, I've had enough of this, Balaghat al-Mutakallimin. Does that make sense? So the Balaghat al-Mutakallimin, it is basically based on Abdul Qahir and Jurjani, but the way that they talk with like tons and tons of logic and, the taqsimat and this and this and this, that's just how they talk. So he was like, oh, forget that stuff. It's annoying. Like, I don't want my students in Azhar reading, you know, Hashit Tasuqi on what's it called? On the Talkhis. I want my students reading Abdul Qahar Jordani himself. And it's just a very different experience. But so it so but it is Abdul Qahar Jordani basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, جزاكم الله خيرا.
Perfect. Um, it's like imagine, for example, you're hearing Al-Jassas saying, "Well, هذا الحديث حسن لغيره," بالشواهد. I don't think he would say that, you know? Like that's not how, like the early Hanafis are doing certain things. Then the late Hanafis do something else. The way they interact with hadith is not the same. And they wouldn't, you know. So it's like what is their toolkit, right? What is their toolkit? And this is quite an interesting thing to say, right? Is like I remember looking at the curriculum of Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, his curriculum, what he studied, and things like that. And even Imam Nawawi, right? So Imam Nawawi is, I guess, about 150 years after him, approximately. They didn't study Balagha. It's not part of the curriculum. So they're obviously talking about Majaz, but they're not talking about Majaz in a very, very clear way. So, it's just interesting, the argument of the Salafi is, well, the Salaf didn't do it, I don't need to do it, I don't need to do it. There's problems in that, but there's some truth in some of these things, is that it can't be that essential. Whereas Nahu and Sarf are really that essential. You know what I'm saying? They're like really, really important. Like it is. So, well, Imam Shafi didn't study Nahu, did he? It's like, yeah, it's true. He was just familiar with Nahu as a native speaker and etc. But I'm sure he didn't actually study Nahu, like sit down and study Nahu. Allahu A'lam. So anyway, it's just useful to know that. So this is من ذكرى حبيب ومنزلي. This is definitely ta'zim, tankir ta'zim. And so why would you do poetry? To see these things, because otherwise it's kind of like fake, It's like, oh, this in this ayah, it's this, So I remember Sheikh Mustafa al-Qabbani saying that. He says, like, if you don't do poetry, you will always just be a muqallid in balagha, meaning somebody tells you this is this, and you just say, okay, but you don't really feel it, Doesn't really, it's not very convincing, or you don't even have the ability to even be convinced. You're just like, okay, I guess so. But, you see examples of things naturally, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So, نبكي من ذكرى حبيب ومنزلي, a beloved and a place. It's not just any, right? It means like what a beloved and what a place, right? That's what it means. The Ritha of Abu Dhu'ayb al-Hudhali, what is it? كم من جميع الشمل ملتئم القوى كانوا بعيش قبلنا فتصدعوا. How many people who are together and whose strengths came together lived a really, really good life before us. فتصدعوا, and then they split up. So it would only make sense if it's for ta'zim. كانوا بعيش. Right? They lived a really good life. Right? That's an amazing life. Right? Allahu A'lam. Okay. والذكرى خفض بمن وهي مضافة إلى الحبيب والمنزل نسق أي معطوف على الحبيب. قوله بسقط اللواء. السقط منقطعه, the place where it cuts off. Right, so the area of the sand that cuts off. It says وهو مسقطه. Not sure why he says مسقط. So سقط يسقط. So I think this is the non-normal. So we should say سقط يسقط مسقط. They say مسقط. على غير, like غرب يغرب مغرب, but we say مغرب, right? So this is, I believe, على خلاف القياس. So the place where it drops off, i.e. cuts off, the sand is changing from being thick to thin. اللواء حيث يسترق الرمل فتخرج معه إلى الجدد. I'm not sure what al-jadad is. فتخرج منه إلى الجدد. So alwa yulwi means to turn. So it's kind of so siqt al-liwa, it's kind of seems like mudaf, like two words that kind of the same kind of word. It's like the place where the sand cuts off and gets thin, something like that. I'm not sure what this word jadad is. بس يقال في مثل الويتم فانزلوا. You turned away, so come down or something. I'm not sure. قال أبو عبيدة يقال في سقط الرمل وسقط النار وسقط الولد 3 لغات. You say سقط وسقط وسقط. I'm not sure what سقط النار is, but سقط الولد is um, stillborn. سقط وسقط وسقط. وقال الرياشي كان الأصمعي لا يعرف إلا السقط وهو سقط الرملة meaning sand مفتوحا. So the place on the edge of the desert or the edge of this area, presumably it's to do with the different like mountain ranges and the type of stone where this kind of like as far as I understand, Saudi Arabia or the whole of Arabia was all sea. So if you can imagine, I don't know when it was, not that long ago, but it was all sea, and if you can imagine, basically, sand. So certain stones being turning into sand, and certain stones, particularly volcanic rock or whatever it is, or what's the word? Uh,
Ex-
the one that's in between. What's it called? Uh,
Sedimentary or metamorphic.
yeah. So the sedimentary rock, but then the other one is the uh, it's rock that's changed. I can't remember the word for it. Anyway, so you can imagine basically you see these differences. So that's why you have like say where often where's this grass going to be as well is some of these mountain ranges. Um, I don't believe there's any fault line. There's any kind of like I don't think these are being pushed together by anything, but I believe these are a lot of form of volcanic activity and things like that. Wallahu a'lam. Just like around Medina. Um, so anyway, so there's points where the sand is different. It's not just all sand, right? Um, and obviously there are places where there's actually earth, right? And there's places where there's rock, and there's different types of rocks, etc. So when I'm saying this actual earth, meaning obviously they're plowing at certain places, right? And it's not just sand. They did grow things like wheat and things like that. Okay, so it says بسقط اللواء. He says الباء فيه 3 أوجه. إحداهن أن تكون في صلة منزل. Right. So قفا بذلك المنزل at that place. So it's متعلق. وتقدير من ذكرى حبيب ومنزل بسقط اللواء. Okay. And a place next to سقط اللواء. والوجه الثاني أن تكون صلة نبكي. So قفا نبكي من ذكرى حبيب ومنزلي ونبكي بسبب تذكرنا بسقط اللواء. Right. أو في ذلك المكان وأن تكون صلة لنبكي أي متعلقا بنبكي على معنى نبكي بسقط اللواء. والوجه الثاني أن تكون الباء صلة لقفا. Let us stand at that point. So let us stand at that point. Let us cry at that point and the place next to. There we go. Right. ويكون التقدير قفا بسقط اللواء. He says أجاز النحويون كل كل نكرمك طعامنا. What's he trying to say here? كل نكرمك طعامنا. What's the point he's trying to make?
Saying طعامنا is the maf'ul bihi of the first verb, even though the second verb is closer.
So even though there is this whole sentence in between, right? So the point he's trying to make is so if the maf'ul bihi it could come after the jawab the jawab, that the maf'ul bihi of the first sentence could be in that, then min bab al-awla al-jar majrur, right? Jar majrur is much more flexible. So having that, saying that بسقط اللواء is متعلق to qif, it's fine. You can do that. Just like you can say كل نكرمك طعامنا, right? على معنى كل طعامنا نكرمك, right? Does that make sense? Hussam, make sense?
Yes, جزاك الله خير.
Okay. It's okay. والسقط خفض بالباء أي في محل فهو مجرور بالباء وهو مضاف إلى اللواء, واللواء لا يتبين فيه الإعراب لأنه مقصور معتل, right? Ends in an LFC, so it's إعراب is تقديري. And then he says الدخول وحومل وتوضح والمقراه مواضع ما بين is that a scene there? I don't think so. Can't see if that's a scene or not. إمرة إلى أسود العين. Right? These are all places. So here's an interesting discussion, right? So we try and, the way we see al-ulum is that, we're going to study A, B, and C. Right? There's textbooks. You study these different textbooks, and then you kind of go from there. What we're seeing, for example, in this book here is we're kind of doing random things, if that makes sense. Like I'm studying poetry, and like it doesn't really get me to a very clear goal in a very fast way, right? So here's another education. Like, have you ever been to Aswad al-Ain? So no. Well, isn't that also part of your Islamic education to, like go to these places and see what life was like? What would it been like going from, like traveling by camel and foot from Damascus all the way down to Mecca, and Mecca all the way down to Yemen? Like, what would it have been like? Is that also part of our education? It is, right? It is. So there's lots of things. I remember Sheikh Ali Hani saying this, is like, he said, تصل إلى ما تحتاج إليه بما لا تحتاج إليه. You get to that which you want by means of things that you don't want, you're not interested in, right? And obviously you can't just learn every single thing under the sun and all these different things, but geography, I think, is quite an important thing. History is an important thing. Poetry is an important thing, right? You can't do everything, but traveling is an important thing. Just getting an idea, like imagine how you would change your understanding of the hijrah and of Islam by literally doing the hijrah yourself, right? I mean, you couldn't reenact it all on so many different levels, on a social, political level, all these things. But at least, for example, doing it, like walking and doing the hijrah yourself, right? You would look at things in a very different way, right? So traveling is an education, and seeing these places is an education. Okay, so I don't even know where Immara is or Aswad al-Ain. No idea. What's it like? What's it not like? No idea. So it says Aswad al-Ain Jabal. قال ابن حبيب هي منازل كلاب, the tribe of Kilab. وروى الأصمعي بين الدخول وحوملي, right? بين كذا وكذا, between X and Y. وقال لا يقال رأيتك بين زيد فعمر. That's incorrect, right? That doesn't make any sense. Fa is not used with بين. وقال فراء بين الدخول فحوملي معناه بين أهل الدخول فحوملي فمعناه بين فأهل حومل فذلك جاز أن يكون المنسوق بالفاء. Right, so trying to explain it, it says between these people and then between those people. Right, that makes sense. So قف نسأل منازل آل ليلى فتوضح بين حومل وأرادة. Right, he has a fa here as well. أراد بين أهل حومل وبين أهل أراد. وقال الآخر لجارية بين السليل عروقها وبين أبي الصهباء من آل خالد. So she's between these people and those people. Right. جعل السليل أبا جامعا وكذلك أبو صهباء فلهذا معنى رد بين مع الاسم الثاني. So said between she is her her salil. Salil usually means from the word sulala, which is your what's the word? Sulala is like your progeny, but it's like your what's the word? Dynasty. Sulala, right? And fu'ala, as we know, is used for a small thing that comes off a big thing, right? I guess it should be the other way around, right? Like a dynasty is a big thing that comes off a small thing. Like there's one man and there's all these people that come after him. It's called your sulala, salil. So anyway, so salil, the progeny of so and so. And so here he said he made it as meaning the word father, right? Baina as-salil, meaning the original source, wa baina abis sahba. So she's from this lineage of a great grandfather or great father from this person and that person. Right? So that's why she's between these groups of people. So the point is trying to say you can have the father. وقال هشام بن معاوية المعنى بسقط اللواء. Who is this individual? Okay. He says المعنى بسقط اللواء بين ما بين الدخول إلى حومل. Right. From that place up to that place. فأسقط. قال أبو بكر i.e. ابن الأنباري هذا خطأ في قول الفراء لأن ما حد بين الشيئين فلا يجوز سقوطها. So he says قال الفراء ومن قال شربنا ما زبالة فالثعلبية على معنى ما بين إلى عفوا ثعلبية لم يسقط ما لأنها هي الحد بين موضعين. Right. So this is a side point here, is saying that basically ma can mean ma baina. Right. And it can also mean baina ma. So in Surah Al-Baqarah, what is it? When they're talking about the cow, what is it?
عوان بين ذلك or...
عوالم بين ذلك. No. Sorry, I'm like yesterday was a pretty intense day, so I'm like half alive right now. I'm trying to think. ففعلوا ما تؤمر قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا. I'm mixing something else up. But there's this point where the word ma means baina. There's something dropped. So Akhfash mentions it and Farrat mentions it. I'm trying to think where this is. Give me a second. that was it. إن الله يستحي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها ما بين بعوضة فما فوقها. Yeah. So bring that up. Here, I'm not reading. I'm not reading from Akhfash or from Farra. I'm just jumping straight to Samin al-Halabi. So he says.
Sheikh, I found in Nahas,
You found
he
it what?
mentioned, I found in Nahas, he mentions three awjuh for the meaning of this ma. He says the third one is I think what you're saying. الوجه الثالث قول الكساء والفراء قال التقدير أن يضرب مثلا ما بين بعوضة حذفت بين وأعربت بعوضة بإعرابها.
Oh, there we go, right? So basically between this and between that, right? That's where he's gonna. I just want to see it here. So that's in the has itself. It's gonna come later on, as you're saying.
Yeah, Nahas is quoting Kisai in Farra.
Okay. Trying to see where it is here though. Here we go. So look. وقيل نصب على إسقاط الخافض التقدير ما بين بعوضة. Right. There we go. فلما حذفت بين أعربت بعوضة بإعرابها وتكون الفاء في قوله فما فوق بمعنى إلى أي إلى ما فوقها ويعزى هذا للكسائي والفراء وغيرهم من الكوفيين. Next line showing يا أحسن الناس ما قرنا إلى قدم from top to toe ما بين قرن إلى قدم. Right. أي ما بين وله عشرون ما ناقة فحملا ما بين ناقة فحمل. Right. So of camels and young, or with if you add all the pregnant, all the what's it called, all the all the camels about to be born, he has 20. ما بين ناقة وحمل. وعلى القول الثاني يكون مثلا مفعول. Okay. So, جزاكم خير. so قال الفراء من قال شربنا ماء زبالة فالثعلبية على معنى ما بين زبالة إلى الثعلبية لم يسقط ماء لأنها هي الحد بين موضعين. Right. وأنشد, is it exactly the same? فما فوقها ما بين, the area that is between, then here ما بين. Yeah, it's the same. Sorry. Great. Sorry. Okay, so that's what he's saying there. على معنى ما. Okay. So between these areas and up to this area, or between the people of this area and then the people of this area and then the people of this area. فتوضح في المقراط. Right. لم يعف رسمها لما نسجتها من جنوب وشمال. So what is it? لما. So قف نبكي من ذكرى حبيب ومنزلي بسقط اللواء بين الدخول فحوملي فتوضح في المقرات لم يعفو رسمها. لم يعفو. So again, this is why we're doing this thing. لم يعفو. I want to know what afu means. You say, oh, you pick up a Raghib al-Asfahani and he tells you it means this, this, this. You pick up, Ibn Faris, Mu'jam Maqayis al-Lugha, and they say, well, afa means this. I want to see it though. I want to see afa in use. Here we go. Here's afa in use. Right. So you say, so now he's explaining why is it fatudiha, why is it nasb, i.e. why does it have a fatha? He says, إلا أن توضح نصب لأنه يجرى للتعريف والتاء زائدة في أوله وما لا يجرى لا يدخله تنوين ولا خفض. Right? I.e. it's غير منصرف, that's what it means. He calls it لا يجرى, it's not made to flow. It's not made to flow. It doesn't flow in the same way. Right? So he says something that has a ta' zaida, something that is, so he says, فالمقراتي, this has an L, whereas tudih does not have an L. So this can be, even if it's a place name, it can be munsarif, whereas tudih doesn't have one. The other ones also have L's. Where is it? بسقط اللواء بين الدحولين. But Hawmali does not have an L, does it? Where's my line? So why Hawmali? So ad-dakhul, okay, has an L, but for Hawmali, why is that munsarif? So Allahu A'lam. So the point is, he's saying that this is غير منصرف, and this is obviously on the pattern of a verb as well. For tudih, it's on the pattern of a verb, right? So it's going to be, for more than one reason, it's going to be غير منصرف. So Allahu A'lam, Hawmali, why is it munsarif? Allahu A'lam. So then he says, but notice the terms. He calls it la yujra. Right. He says لم يعفر رسمها قال الأصمعي معناه لم يدرس. It has not passed, it has not gone away. لم يدرس. Right. دارس, it's gone, disappeared. Right. It's passed away. لم يعفو رسمها. So here عفا يعفو is لازم. لم يعفو رسمها. The rasm, the drawing, the signs have not disappeared. Right. But notice how we say عفوت عنك واعفو عني, right? We don't actually use it as with the مفعول به, right? خير. قال أسمع معناه لم يدرس لما نسجته من الجنوب والشمال, right? With a فتحة شمال. شمال left, شمال north wind, right? جنوب. So because the لما نسجته, because of the weaving, the alternating of the north and south wind, what's happening is there's traces of people and things. It gets covered and then uncovered and then covered and then uncovered. فهو باق ونحن نحزن ولو عفا لاسترحنا. If only it would go away, right? Subhanallah, right? If only it could be wiped out and gone away, then we wouldn't be reminded every 2 minutes. But it's just there. Like you keep whenever you come to this place, you'll still see the signs of the tents, the signs of this, the signs of that. SubhanAllah. قال ابن أحمر ألا ليت المنازل قد بلينا فلا يرمينا عن شزن حزينة. معناه لا يرمينا عن تحرف وتشزن. تشدد. No, I don't know what it is. تشزن. I'm not sure what it is. Oh, it mentions it here, sorry. So anyway, he gives another example of a poet similar thing. If only it would قد بلينا, right, with the alif is alif al-itlaq. Yeah, I wish they just go away. I wish the places could just go away and stop existing and be worn out. فلا يرمينا, so they wouldn't throw something as shuzun of they wouldn't throw throw things at a sad person and shuzun. So it says a shuzun معناه يرمينا عن تحرف, moving around, وتشزن يقال شزن فلان ثم رمى أي تحرف في أحد شقيه. He moved from one side. So they wouldn't. Basically, what he's saying is that these manazil, they move a little bit right, a little bit to the right, or a little bit to the left, and then they shoot arrows at us, i.e., by basically moving around and showing us the remains of it. Does that make sense? So, and and shuzun means ba'da taharrufin, moving to the side or moving to that side. So he's making it kind of a simile or kind of comparison between a person who moves a little bit to the right and then shoots an arrow at you, to the scenario of where the wind exposes something and then shoots the arrow of pain that you can see. Oh my God, that's where the tent used to be. That's where they used to keep the camels. I can still see the dent. Or does that make sense?
Yes, mashallah.
Right. معنى البيت ليتها قد بليت حتى لا ترمي قلوبنا بالأحزان والأوجاع. ويذهب الأصمعي إلى أن الريح أقبلت وأدبرت على هذه المواضع حتى عفتها وأبقت منها الأثر يذهب الأصبعي إلى أن الريح أقبلت وأدبرت على هذه المواضع حتى عفتها وأبقت منها. I don't understand what it says here. عفتها meaning it wore them out. It removed the traces. But then he says وأبقت منها الأثر أو الرسم. So I don't understand what that means, because it seems to be the opposite. Or maybe it's the main traces, the overt and obvious traces have been wiped out, and the smaller, harder traces like the rasam that you could kind of only just kind of guess if you stood back or if you knew what was going on. Maybe something like that. وقال قوم المعنى لم يعفو رسمها للريح وحدها إنما عفا للمطر والريح. Right? It wasn't wiped away just by the wind, but it was rather wiped away by the rain and the wind. وهو دارس في المعنى. That means to be. وغير ذلك من مر الدهور, the passing of eons or whatever it is. أي وهو دارس في المعنى. وقال آخرون لم يعفو رسمها لاختلاف هاتين الريحين. So there's two different winds blowing in different directions. It gets covered, uncovered. ولو دامت عليه واحدة لعفة لأن الريح الواحدة تدرس الأثر. It wipes it out. والريحان لا تدرسانه لأن الريح الواحدة تسفى على الرسم. Pretty sure this word is تسفى means to blow over. The traces فيدرس, it gets passed away. وإذا اعتورته ريحان, when there's two of them attack it, اعتور, take turns, عفوا, the two take turns. فسفت عليه إحداهما وغطته ثم هبت الأخرى كشفت عن الرسم ما سفتت الأولى. والحجة, so that's that point, that it's being covered and then exposed, covered then exposed. والحجة في ذلك قول ذي الرمة من دمنة نصفت عنها الصبا سفعا كما ينشر بعد الطية الكتب سيلا من الدعص أغشته معارفها نكباء تسحب أعلاه فينسحب. Right, so the point is كما تنشر بعد الطية الكتب. So you close the book, and then you did nashr of the book, you opened the book. That's what he's saying. The book is being opened and closed, and opened and closed, and these things are being the same thing here. يذهب إلى أن النكباء ألبست معارف هذه الدمنة سيلا من الدعس فسقته عنه الصبا. فكذلك هذا الرسم ألبسته الجنوب التراب والرمل فكشفته عنه الشمال. فهذا معنى قول أن الرسم لم يدرس. This going back and forward. قال أبو بكر محمد بن آدم العبدي معنى قوله لم يعفر رسمها لم يدرس من قلبي وهو في نفسه دارس. Right? It's still there, but it's gone, but in my heart it hasn't gone. والرسم الأثر بلا شخص. There's nothing standing up. شخص or شاخص we can say. Right? That's called الرسم. وجمعه أرسم ورسوم كما يقال أبحر وبحور في جمع البحر. ومعنى لم يعفو لم يدرس. يقال عفا الأثر يعفو عفوا عفوا وعفوا وعفاء. So عفو though should be عفو and عفاء should be غير منصرف, should be لازم, right? علي يعلى علاء, to be high, right? سجد يسجد سجودا, right? as opposed to afu. The afu raja', right, is the muta'addi version of ruju'. Right? It says تحمل أهلها منها فبانوا على آثار من ذهب على آثار من ذهب العفاء. This is يقال عفا الشيء يعفو عفوا إذا كثر, right? عفو اللحية, right? عفا الشيء يعفو عفوا إذا كثر, right? حتى عثوا يريد حتى كثروا, right? So يعفو اللحية, have a big beard. وقال الشاعر ولكن نعض السيف منها بأسوق عافيات اللحم كومي, right? عافيات اللحم, they have lots of fat, lots of meat. ويقال أعفيت الشيء إذا كثرته. Here we go. جاء في الحديث أحفو الشوارب وأعفو اللحى. ويقال عفا فلان فلانا إذا طلب نائله. Please give me. Right. وهو عاف وجمعه عفا. Right. In the border, what is it? ساحته. عفون ساحته. What is it? Something. It's the first line of one of the chapters in the border. عفون ساحته. Something. على أينق something. عفون ساحته. Where's AI when you need it, right? I need non-stop surveillance to help me. عفون ساحته. يا خير من يمم العفون ساحته. Right? Oh, best of those who the people who were trying to get something went in the direction of his saha. سعيا وفوق متون الأينق الرسوم. Yeah. And that's the pun there, right? He says, the pun is, so it says, يا خير من يمم العفون ساحته. Oh, best of those in whose direction al-afuna, people who are seeking something, a gift, have gone in the direction of his saha, of his kind of big house, his open area. وَفَوْقَ مُتُونِ الْأَيْنُقِ الرُّسُمِ. And they have ridden above the backs of Ainuq, plural of Nuq, right? Ar-Rusumi, that are strong or something like that. So the point is Rusum and Afa, right? You say Afa, right? We use the word Afa and Rusum together, but here it's used in totally different ways. So it's kind of a bit of a pun there. Right? Khair, I need to have another class, inshallah. So عفا فلان فلانا إذا طلب نائله وهو عاف وجمعه عفاة. خير inshallah, we'll come back to this next week. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
جزاك الله خير.